Shnubaraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Utinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Namaste Sindhuvari Paschati Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Gaura Bhakti Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram 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 Hare. Does that mean it's going to be a bad class? Or it's a new style?
Can I fix it?
Make a new style. Okay, we have a title. For today's class. You translate? Yeah. No. Transmitter? Lalita usually translates. You want to sit in a group? So the title is The Psychology of Commitment. The Psychology of Commitment and how commitment empowers us. The Psychology of Commitment and how commitment empowers us. So, there's two aspects, two things. The psychology is what state of mind you have to be in to commit, or what does it mean to be committed. And then
Прабу, вы не могли сесть там, потому что сейчас мальчик, который переводит через радио, она не подошла. Вот если можно, вот Прабу переводит.
Can you move back a little?
На палатку у нас некоторые
So it doesn't pick up.
не подошла Матаджи, что случилось? Вот Прабу будет переводить.
You know,
Пойдем.
we're just arranging the Russians. We have the Russians in the back so they won't attack us. Because we're always afraid of Russians. We grew up in America in fear of Russians. So we're keeping them in the back so they don't attack. If you think about commitment, then you can see there's different levels of commitment. Like, one level is, I'm not committed at all. You believe in this? No. You want to help with this? No. And at one level would be, yeah, it sounds good. Well, you want to participate? No. So you're committed in the sense of you believe it. It's a good idea. Like, we're going to do a Harinam party this year every day for 8 hours. What do you think? Great idea. You want to join? No. So your commitment is that it's a good idea, but as far as your participation, no. Then next level, it's a good idea, you want to participate? I'll try, which means maybe you'll get out sometime. So it's not a deep level. Then another level will be, I will come out. How much? Well, I'll come out as much as I can. So you're not going to come out every day, but you're committed to doing something. And then the highest level of commitment would be, I'm committed to do this every day. So you could see that you could commit, and you might not realize it, but you're not actually fully committing. It just might be you're committed to the idea. It sounds good. Right? Now some people take initiation this way. They like the idea. They know it's important. But they actually don't fully commit, and they don't even realize they haven't fully committed. They realize it later when they have trouble. So The psychology of commitment is that a person commits fully to something when they've ruled out any other option as being of any value or of any need. It's just I've committed to this. There's no option to do anything else. That's what commitment means. There are no other options. And no other option looks good. It's not just that there aren't any options. They don't look good. You might say, I'm doing Krishna consciousness. Why? Because there's really nothing else to do in the material world. But are you attracted to the material world? Yes. So that's not commitment. That's kind of like, well, if something better came along, I would do it, and nothing better has come along, so I'll do this. That level of commitment. But when the commitment reaches a level where there's nothing else you'd rather do, you've looked at every other option, and no option is attractive, then you can commit. And that's why you'll find devotees who've been devotees their whole lives, or most of their life, and they've had no problems. And if you ask them why, most likely one of the answers will be, because I'm not attracted, no other option makes any sense to me. Just imagine you're trying to commit to something. And you think, okay, this is good. And you look at your options, and some of the options look good also. How committed will you be if some of the options look good? It's going to be more difficult, right? Krishna consciousness is good, but I also like A, B, C, D, and E. It's going to be harder to commit. Just like if you look at Prabhupada's teachings. What's Prabhupada trying to do in his teachings? He's trying to eliminate options. Isn't it? Think of it this way. You can be Krishna conscious, and what's your options? And then Prabhupada gives you the options. You could get old, you could get sick, then you can die, you can come back again, and you can continually doing that. That's one option to being Krishna conscious, right? What's another option Prabhupada gives us? You could work very hard. Like a what?
Donkey.
Like a donkey. Or worse than a donkey. You could work hard and till you foam in the mouth. That's yeah. That's another option to Krishna consciousness. What's another option? You could become a slave of your senses. Right? You could become a servant of your senses. Whatever your senses say you can do. That's another option. And then you go through Prabhupada's books, you see he gives you so many options. If you don't do Krishna consciousness, this is what's going to happen. You'll be a dancing dog. Maya will pull you around. The modes of nature will make you act this way and that way. And it gets very scientific if you study the modes of nature. You can see your options divided by mode and by category. Your faith will be this way, your religion will be this way, your eating will be this way. These are all the options. Right? So Prabhupada's doing that so that we can be committed to Krishna consciousness, because to be committed, you have to rid yourself of other options. If you have other options, what happens? Your mind becomes attracted. Just like we spoke a few weeks ago about fasting. You want to fast. What are your options? Well, I could just drink water. Well, I could do milk and fruit. Maybe I could just do fruit juice. Maybe I could do it till dusk. So you have all these options. How are you going to fast? If you have no options, then you'll fast. What are you going to do today? I'm going to fast. Are you sure? Yes. Do you have any options? No, we're just going to fast. You're going to drink water? No, we're just going to fast. You have no options. As soon as you say, well, I'll see how it goes, maybe water, maybe juice, maybe milk, then you have options, and then you weaken your commitment. So the psychology of commitment is no option. And if you look at anything you're committed to, look at your options. You're married. What's your option? I could divorce. I could marry the girl next door. That's an option. I mean, it's not an option, but you could think like that. I could run off with the guy next door. He's got big muscles and blue eyes. My husband's fat and ugly. So he's an option. In your mind, if he's an option, what does that mean? Well, we understand dayato vishayam punsam. If you have options and you meditate on them too long, they grow. Right? When Krishna says dayato vishayam punsam, think of it like a balloon. You meditate on something, and it's like a little balloon, and the more you think about it, the more air it gets. And then the more it occupies your mind. At a certain point, it occupies your entire mind. Right? Dayato vishayam punsam. So, ready? We were having a japa workshop. And I was telling the devotees that by the end of the workshop, if I can get you to the level where you're committed to never chant any japa that isn't good, then I've succeeded as a teacher. And for the rest of your life, you'll never allow yourself to chant bad japa, I'm successful. And that's how I would define being committed to japa. I'm committed to chant good japa. What does that mean? I will never allow myself to not chant good japa. Right? If you allow yourself to chant bad japa, that means you're not fully yet committed to good japa. That's an option. Okay, today I don't feel good. What are the options? Bad japa. Yes? We were giving a class. Where was it? I was speaking to some devotees, and I said, you can schnick, yeah, it was yesterday. You can schnick your way into another, you can schnick wam your way into another body, or you can shudhanam your way back to Godhead. Does that make sense? You know, schnick wam? You can schnick wam. You don't understand schnick wam? You can schnick wam your way into another body, or you can shudhanam your way back to Godhead. And so, somebody might ask me, how can we chant better rounds? And the simple answer is, remove all options in your mind to not chant good rounds. As long as chanting bad is an option, because I don't feel good, because I'm tired, because I got up late, because it's late at night, because so-and-so's sitting next to me and he chants too loud, because so-and-so's in the temple and he hurt my feelings, or whatever it is. As long as those options are there, how will you chant good rounds every day? Does that make sense? Yes, no, maybe? We're all here, alive? Raise your hand if you're alive. Make sure, you know. If I say yes, no, and nobody answers, then I think everyone's dead. I have to always check, make sure you're alive. So, if you look at any of your commitments and ask yourself, what are my options to not being fully committed, then you understand how committed you are. You're married, you start talking about divorce. That means you're not committed to marriage. You're a brahmachari, you start talking about marriage. It means now. You're married, you start talking about being a brahmachari again. It means you're not committed. Where you have options for ways out, that means your commitment is waning. So, how do we know if we've committed? Because once we committed, there's no more options. The options are gone. And that answers the second question. Why do we commit? We commit because we want to eliminate options. Why do you commit to 16 rounds? Because you want to make sure you do it every day. Right? Because if you didn't make an official commitment, maybe you wouldn't do it. So the idea is, if I make an official commitment, then I have to do it. There's no option to not doing it. Right? That's why I make the commitment. If I make a commitment to not take drugs or not eat meat or not have illicit sex, that means there's no option. It's like Arjuna there was an attempt to seduce Arjuna by an apsara. And he refused. For him, that was not an option. And she couldn't convince him. It just wasn't an option. So, if you made a vow, and in your mind, you ever contemplated breaking that vow, that means you still have options. And that means you haven't yet committed fully. And if you haven't committed fully, then it's possible you'll break the vow, because you left options. And if you have no options, then you're fully committed. So based on that, I think you can realize that many things that you think you're committed to, you're not 100% committed to. There may be some things that you realize I'm 100% committed to. I would never break this vow. Just like I think for 99.999999999999 ad infinitum devotees, they would never eat meat. Right? But not every devotee will read every label of everything they're eating. Right? In fact, I was taking a probiotic, and the typeface is like 4-point and on the bottle, so I couldn't read it. And I was asking my daughter, can you tell me what the directions are? Do you take it on an empty stomach? When do you take it? She said there are no directions, but it says they're gelatin capsules. So I should have, I assumed because it was in our house, someone had already read it. So I think if you're 100% committed, then you'll read every label, right? Does that make sense? So if you look at anything in your life where you're having difficulty following, then the second part of the talk, the question is, or the statement was, how commitment empowers us. How does it empower us? It empowers us when we remove options. That's how we get empowered. Okay, I'm going to do this. Just like for myself, I knew that being celibate was basically impossible living outside the temple, at least in the culture that I grew up in. That it was the era of free love. So it was virtually impossible. I'm sure there were people that were celibate, but very few and very rare, and surrounded by the opportunities. And drugs were on every street corner where I went to school, in every house. So it's very difficult to follow. But I knew when I go into the temple, I make that commitment, then it's finished. Then it was finished. That's the power of commitment. Something that you're habituated to, and you commit to it at that point, all options are now off limits. And the only option is what you've committed to. And that's why we take vows. At least one of the reasons we take vows. Now, have you experienced that when you take a vow, it gives you power to do something that's normally difficult? How many of you experienced that? Yeah, so that's the value of a commitment if you actually make the commitment, if it's fully made. But if it's not fully made, the sign of it not being fully made is we'll be battling with that commitment. It's going to be, from time to time, it may be difficult to follow. Just like when I got married, I told my wife, I said, we should make a vow that in this house, the word divorce and the word separation can never be spoken. It's not allowed. Because if it's allowed to be spoken, it violates the commitment. Because if you speak separation or divorce, then you're talking about an option. And the only option we have is to work it out. It's the only option we have. So now you look at your life. I actually have to go to the bathroom, so I'm going to let you do an exercise. You can partner up with somebody and talk about how committed you are. Just discuss this idea. You know, I've committed verbally to something, but do I still meditate on options? Do I think about options? And just discuss it. And then I'll be back, and I'll turn this around, and all the devotees can look at you. Divine arrangement. So find a partner, every one of you, find a partner to share with. And then you can discuss how this applies in your life. Okay?
ऑप्शन है जब तक but I guess Well, not used to take it. Maybe yes, maybe because it's just like electric doesn't mean that I experienced something like someone, for example, was very yes, like something
We're back. We're alive and well. Okay? So now we need to hear from you. So we need to hear what you discovered. What did you discover? Did you discover anything? Did you discover you're a mess when it comes to commitment?
No, we are both. We are in some things we are a mess, and in other things we are committed.
Oh, so Aditi was saying some things she's very committed and some things not. And the ones that you were not committed to, did you think you were, or you knew you weren't?
I knew I was not.
Did you discover what you can do? Did you get that far?
Of course, we have to remove the options.
Yeah, because we're trying to understand. Well, I think the natural question is, how do I become more committed? If I'm not committed, how do I become more committed? So we can, obviously remove the options. But you have to be in the consciousness that you want to remove the option, right? So to know it is one thing. Someone else want to share what they realized? Or didn't realize? Yes.
So I was realising that if you're attached to something, because the attachment you are committed in your mind.
You're attached to something?
So that's why I'm not committed, fully committed.
Attached to something that gets in the way of your commitment.
And I was thinking that by reading Prabhupada's books, then you can become convinced.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought this up, because there's a professor in America who wrote a book on commitment, and professors do a lot of research when they write books. And one of the things she found is that, or one of the ways they define commitment in the psychological sense, is to be attached to what you're committed to. So if I'm attached to something that's pulling me away from my commitment, that means I need, like you're saying, if I read Prabhupada's books, I should develop attachment for the things I'm supposed to be committed to. So that's an interesting definition. So we're trying to discover ways we can become more committed, and that's one way, become more attached to what you're committed to. Like, how many of you are really attached to chanting 16 rounds every day? Like if you didn't chant 16 rounds, you'd feel like jumping off the roof. Raise your hand. All right. Maybe like 2/3 or a half, right? So those of us who are not that attached, like if we don't chant 16 rounds, it's like, all right, I can do it tomorrow, the next day, make it up on the Ekadasi. That's not good. We should become attached. That should be something that is very much a priority and something we really want. So now look at anything you're committed to and ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how attached am I to it, to doing it? And obviously, things we're not well committed to will be lower on the scale. Things we're more committed to will be higher on the scale of attachment. Then you might say, well, how can you just become attached to something that you're not attached to now, that you need to be? I don't read Prabhupada's books enough. Well, you just need to become more attached to reading his books. Right? Well, okay, so how do I do that? Well, one of the ways you become attached to something that you're not yet attached to is to understand the value of it. And how much is in it, and how much it can do for you. And the more you understand, the more attached you become. Just like, let's say, I'm going back to Alachua in the summer. And let's say, I want to get you to come to Alachua. And you're saying, it's so expensive, it's in America, I don't live in America. And I'd say, there are 150 Prabhupada disciples in Alachua. And they all speak, or most of them speak, on Prabhupada's Vyas Puja. So you should be there for Janmashtami Vyas Puja, because where in the world are you going to go and hear one Prabhupada disciple after another, after another, after another? And you think, that's amazing. What?
In Vrindavan.
In Vrindavan, maybe. Yeah. Not even 150, I don't think.
Yeah, but there's no time for 150 to speak anyway.
Yeah. All right. So you can go to Vrindavan, or you can go to Alachua. But I'm trying to convince you to come to Alachua. And I give you 10 reasons. And with each reason, you're feeling like I want to come. And if I can get you to the point where you say, I really want to go, I got some attachment, then you'll go. The deities, the programs, the this, that, whatever. So, by knowledge of the benefits of something, we become attached. By knowledge of the detriments of something, we become detached. Right? I often joke and say, look at this recorder. This is called a Zoom H4n. And N means they had an H4 before this, but this is better. Quite an amazing recorder. It's only like $260. You could spend more just for a microphone, and this records, and you can put in microphones here. It actually has 4 tracks. You can play your guitar in here. It has effects. You can do a 4-track recording in this little thing. Did you imagine 25 years ago if you said, I could do a 4-track recording in this little thing? You'd have to spend about $2,000. Isn't it amazing? And you're looking at it going, that's amazing. And then I say, but they have the H6 now, which makes the H4 look kind of like a piece of junk. It has better microphones, it has better features, it has 6 tracks, it has removable microphones for different purposes. And I go on glorifying the H6, or whatever it is, the H8, to the point where you think, Mahatma, why don't you just throw this H4 away? It's a piece of junk. Right? So by discussing the benefits of something, we become attached. By discussing the deficiencies, the handicaps, we become detached, right? Just like maybe one of the Matajis comes to me and says, I'm thinking about marrying this brahmachari. What do you think? And I say, oh, he's a great guy, he's wonderful, really committed person, just very sensitive, genuine, very stable, grounded, what are you going to be thinking? Thinking, nah, he's not for me. No, you're going to think, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And it is possible that I could get you somewhat attached to him just by talking about it, isn't it? Or I could detach you from, oh, this brahmachari, he doesn't get along with anyone. He's very, very unstable. He's really got an attitude. He gets angry all the time. We have to wake him up for Mangalarti. Right after Mangalarti, he goes to sleep. He sleeps through Bhagavatam class. He shows up for prasadam. He eats twice as much as everybody. Goes back to sleep. You have to wake him up to go on Sankirtan. He goes on Sankirtan and he goes out like for an hour and then he just goes shopping. You're not going to want to marry that guy. Unless he's a millionaire, maybe you consider it. But generally, so I can attach you or detach you just by talking about what's good or bad about something or someone. Right? So if you want to detach from something, you have to look at what's bad about it. If you want to attach to something, you have to look what's good about it. You have to remind yourself. And that's the other thing that Prabhupada does in his books. He's reminding us of what's good about Krishna consciousness. He's not only telling us what's bad about the material world, he's reminding us what's good. So we become attached to Krishna consciousness. So in a sense, once you get to a certain level of attachment, your commitment will be firm. And you won't really think of it as commitment anymore. You'll think of it more as attachment, that I couldn't do anything. Like, for example, there's an interesting story. It relates to this. It also relates to dharma. But a student was asking his teacher, it was a writing class, so how do you get inspiration to write? How do you get creativity to write? How do you just sit down and write? Because I find it so difficult just to get myself to sit down in the seat and actually write. The teacher thought about it and he said, I cannot not write. I cannot not write. He couldn't answer the question because he didn't know how. Doesn't have to get himself started. He can't stop himself from writing. That make sense? Like it's so much who he is that it just comes out of him. Right? Like Satsvarup Maharaj. If you asked him that question, he would give the same answer, I suppose. I cannot not write. I can't give you any other answer. Because I'm not coming from the point of forcing myself to write. So if you can become so attached to something, right? How is it that you did this every day for the last 30 years? I cannot think of not doing it. How is it that you chanted 16 rounds every day since initiation? I cannot think of not doing it. It's not a thought. I'm too attached. It doesn't have a place in my mind. Does that make sense? So if you want to commit to something, you have to have a place in your mind for that. How did you follow these principles? Because I cannot imagine ever breaking them. It's just not part of my reality. I couldn't imagine ever doing that. It just doesn't fit in my reality because I'm attached. Now, you might say, Prabhu, how can you become attached to celibacy? That seems like a paradox, right? Because celibacy, as we all know, is just torture, right? Celibacy. It's hard, it's difficult. It's like walking up a mountain with weights on your back. But actually, you can become very attached to that because a celibate has conquered a universe. What can you not, if you can conquer that, what else can't you not conquer? It's a kind of freedom. It's a kind of power. So if you look at it in a positive way, it's freedom, it's power, it's liberation. And then you think, would I ever break it? No, I would never give away my freedom. You reformulate how you look at it. Otherwise, some might think, it's just torture. Right? And if you think it's torture, what's going to happen? If you think sex is enjoyable and celibacy is torture, what's going to happen? Sooner or later. You're going to do what you're going to do, what seems most attractive. So if you want to be celibate as a brahmacharya grihastha, you have to have attraction for that. There has to be positive emotions and attachments connected to that. Yeah, this is what I want to do. I like doing it. And if someone says, is celibacy easy? And you say, yeah, I like doing it. Or you say, it's really hard. What does that mean? I don't like doing it. I'd rather not do it, but I know it's better for me, so I do it. So, as we were saying, you gain knowledge of something, the positive aspects or the negative aspects of breaking a principle, and that creates attachment. So that's good. Now become attached to the thing you want to do instead of the thing that gets in the way of what you want to do. Yes?
When you said that you gain knowledge and you said, oh, he's such a good guy, and then you said he's such a bad guy, I found it very manipulative.
Oh, on my part. No, I'm just saying if it were true. You said, tell me about him. And I'm just telling you how he is, not more or less, this is just how he is. I mean, I could manipulate you if I wanted. But assuming I was just telling how he was, not trying to... Well, you see, okay. Let's go into a little, we've gone to the psychology of commitment, we'll take a sidetrack into the psychology of Maya. This is how Maya works. You look at something, and it looks enjoyable, and you want to enjoy it. So if you want to enjoy something, do you look at the good in it or the bad in it? Good. Even if the bad's there, you don't look at the bad, because if you look at the bad, you can't enjoy it. Correct? Like, we often give the example. I serve out ice cream. Before we say Sharira Avijaja, I list 108 reasons why ice cream will kill you if you eat it. And it will give you arthritis, heart disease, cancer, bronchitis, and every known disease available to human beings. And a few the animals get. This is what we call in English, I've just rained on your parade. You understand? Rained on your parade. Yeah. You're going out. You're getting home. You're going to have a parade today, and I come and bring buckets of water and pour it on your parade. I've just rained on your ice cream parade, and now you're all sitting there and saying, "Why did you say that? Now I don't want to eat the ice cream. I can't enjoy it." And then I say, "Did you know it was bad for you?" And you say, "Yeah." Were you thinking it was bad for you? No. Why not? Because if I did, I couldn't enjoy it, so I didn't think it was bad for me. Isn't it? Now, many of you may not know that ice cream is not the healthiest food that God created. But a lot of you know, and intuitively you know, it's probably not that healthy. You know, it's just like cream and sugar. So, but you don't want to think about that. So you just want to think about what flavor it is and how good it tastes. And then you can enjoy it. So, one second. So the psychology of Maya is that you only see the good. You don't see the bad, right? And you can become very easily attached to something if you only see the good and don't see the bad, if the bad exists. And if you want to become detached from something, one of the greatest ways to become detached from it is actually see it as it is, with all the pain and all the difficulty. And if, you know, I know enough about health, I could probably get you off white sugar, white flour, potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, wheat flour, white rice. You know, give me long enough and you'll be like, you know, Prabhu, you only left me with like 5 things to eat the rest of my life. I go, yeah, but you'll be healthy, you'll feel good. So I could probably do that for many of you. And for the ones that I couldn't do it, you definitely wouldn't be able to enjoy your white flour and sugar anymore. You'd be thinking of me while you're eating it. So that's why some people aren't so fond of reading Prabhupada's books, because he rains on the parade of material life. He just tells it as it is. And he's telling it as it is because we don't always see it as it is, because when you want to enjoy, when we want to enjoy, we only see the good side. We don't see the bad side. Therefore, Prabhupada said there's a saying, you see with two eyes, one good eye, one bad eye. See what's good about it, see what's bad about it. Yes?
The point is that there is power of our mind. If we think something kills us, even if it's not dangerous, it can kill us.
That's another point.
If we are in a good mood, in a good surrounding, and if it digests fully,
Yeah,
although
no. You'll digest the ice cream, that's true, but it'll still kill you. It'll just kill you less if you're in a good mood. That's another point. Yeah, that's like happily going to hell. You know, what does it matter what I do? I'm happy. Yes?
What do you mean by seeing two eyes, good or bad? How will you decide what to do? Because we are seeing both.
Oh, how you decide? That depends on what you're looking at and who you are. If the bad outweighs the good, you'll probably avoid it. If the good outweighs the bad, you'll probably do it.
Because everything has something good or bad.
Yeah, okay, all right. So he's asking, how do you evaluate it? In one sense, it's quite easy. Let's say you're evaluating a situation. Well, should I do this or shouldn't I? So you could stipulate certain conditions that if they exist, I would never do it, and certain conditions, if they did exist, I would definitely do it. So then you can look at the situation. Well, you know, let's give a simple example. We want to go to Vrindavan. So you say, if I can get there at this price, then I'll go. Because this is all the money I have. And if I have to spend more than this, if I can get a room for this price, prasadam for this price, then I go. That's my bottom line. So I look at the pros and cons. I look at trains. I look at planes. I look at first class, second class, third class. I may even get desperate and look at a bus, or more desperate and a bullock cart. Like, this is all the money I have. So they think, well, the only way I could get to Vrindavan is by bus. And I'd probably be dead if I took a bus by the time I got there. And so buses are not an option. So, okay, bus is not an option. Anything over this price is not an option. Anything over this price in a room is not an option. I have a sensitivity to weather. I have to go before the end of March, because weather over this, temperature over this, I'll get sick. So you have your negatives. I can't. And you have your positives. If I go to Vrindavan and this will happen, I'll get this service, I meet this devotee, and then we do this, then I'll go. So that's good eye, bad eye. So you have. You can also do that with choosing a partner in life. What do I need in a partner, and what would be I couldn't tolerate or would be unacceptable? So
You mean we should check our personal qualification also? But you mean we should check our personal qualification on subject matter?
Not all, but the ones that are important for you. Let's say you're a Brahmin. So you might say, if I get married, I need to marry a Brahmin. Because I study, I preach, I would like my wife to help me. So that's very important for you. So if she's not a Brahmin, just everything else is good, but she's not Brahminical, for you, you must have that. So you know certain things you must have, certain things that you must avoid. Let's say you want to get married, and you know your parents will only let you marry a woman from this caste. If you bring home a woman from any other caste, they'll run her back to her family's house. Right? So you know, so it's not an option. So here's a nice devotee woman. Everything's good, but it's not the same caste. Your parents won't accept it. So that's You just see what's acceptable, what's not. Is that okay? All right. Did anyone else? Yes.
Is it correct that one of the main ideas of this class is that we should analyze our life, analyze what habits we want to develop and what habits we want to give up, and after that we should remind ourselves of what positive effects gives this
Yeah.
negative effects.
Yeah, that's part of it. One of the things I think we're most challenged with is committing and not realizing we're not committed. So I'll ask you a question. It'll help answer this and help the discussion. What's the difference between inspiration and commitment?
Commitment, lifelong time. Inspiration, very short.
Inspiration is
More emotional.
inspiration, more of an emotion.
Inspiration leads us to commitments.
It may lead us to commitment. And so what's the difference? Inspiration is an initial motivation. Yes.
Это отсутствие он требует, например, принятия каких-то обетов, к которым человек не готов. И для того, чтобы, в принципе, удержаться с Богом, да, другая альтернатива Бога нет. Да? Человек дает какие-то обеты, которым он не способен следовать, для того, чтобы с Богом остаться.
Sometimes the social scene, they pressure and they force us to accept commitments to which we're not ready for.
Okay.
And we're just relying upon God to
Yeah.
just stay next to
Okay, that's a different point. Hold that thought. I want to stay on the inspiration. Social pressure is not inspiration, that's force. So we can talk about that, it's a good point. I want to ask another question. Do you think when some devotees take initiation, they're inspired and what's the word? I guess I'm tired. They've equated inspiration with commitment. You think that happens? Raise your hand if you think that happens. They're very inspired to surrender to Krishna. They're very inspired to take shelter. And they've equated that with commitment. And later on, when the commitment weakens, then we can realize they were very inspired, but it didn't transform into commitment. So you can see that inspiration is like Leela Shakti is saying, it's a force, but inspiration can wane, and commitment is what maintains the force. So if you're going up and down, then you may consider that maybe my inspiration was strong at some point, but my commitment wasn't. And a lot of times, devotees, they want to meet their spiritual master, they want to meet senior devotees, they want to come to classes to get inspired, because their inspiration is weak. But if your inspiration is weak and you're committed, you'll still go on strongly. We all want to be inspired, there's no question. But if you're dependent on that kind of inspiration to maintain your commitment, that means your commitment is weak. So that's how you can analyze. So, I'm very, so-and-so gave a class, now I'm very inspired. And then the inspiration, it starts to wane in a few days. Right? That means there's lack of commitment. So it's good to distinguish between inspiration and commitment. Inspiration must lead to commitment if you're going to sustain it. Yes?
Can you say that inspiration is more from the mind, something emotional, and commitment is based on intelligence, on clear understanding of sequences?
He's asking, is commitment more of an intellectual process and inspiration more of an emotional process? It may or may not be. It depends, because commitment can also come from an emotional process. I would say inspiration could be intellectual also to some degree, because you read something and you get inspired. It went through your head, it makes sense. But inspiration without commitment, it becomes the same problem. So let's say an emotion can support commitment because you feel so positively about something you want to commit to it. And in fact, emotion is a factor which helps sustain commitment because it creates attachment. Yes.
But you said in the beginning that commitment is based on what we see no other alternatives.
Yeah.
So it's our intelligence.
Not necessarily, because if you love somebody, you wouldn't see any alternative to that relationship. You like chapatis? You like bread? Any kind of bread better than chapatis? Okay, so that bread, that's the highest for you. So there's an emotional experience. There's no real alternative replacement for that. That's not intellectual. So it can be either way. The intellectual is when you don't have the emotional. There's not enough emotion and attachment to it. Like, okay, some people like austerity. They just like fasting. They like being single. They like chanting more rounds. They like that. Maybe you don't. So you don't have the emotion that they have towards austerity. So you have to read about it more. You have to read about the value of it. You have to get it more as an intellectual thing, and then hopefully it trickles down to a feeling that I also want to do this. You see, sometimes we're not committed because there's no emotion. Like, if I find out what kind of service you like to do, and you say, yes, that's what I love to do, and I'll say, will you help me? You say, yes, I'd love to do this. I don't have to inspire you anymore, because you have emotion attached to that, so you'll just do it. You'll naturally be committed. So the point is, it's hard to maintain commitment if there's not emotion involved. You know, like somebody's married and they say, I don't feel anything for you. Right? So if we can create emotion, they'll stay together. Sometimes we create emotion just to the institution of marriage, not to the couple itself, but just to the idea of the value of staying together. And some people will stay together because they're very attached to Dharma. There's emotion towards Dharma, just to stay together. It's not like they're lovebirds like they were when they were younger, but they're attached to Dharma. There's an emotion for that. Does that make sense? Some people have an emotion for their spiritual master, which is so deep that they would never break the principles, even though they want to, because they couldn't break that connection. Now, there's another factor, and we'll get to your point. Slowly we'll get to your point. There are cultural influences which affect our ability to keep our vows. For example, I make a vow, but in the culture I live in, everybody breaks that vow. So it relativizes the vow to me, and it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong because everybody does it. Okay, now it's time for some statistics. This is very interesting. We'll get to your point, but I gotta take a few curves here. Okay. Let's talk about cohabitation. Cohabitation is when a man and a woman decide to live together. Cohabitation. It's okay? Habitat is a word, habitat. It's where you live. So cohabitation is, co is together. Cooperation, operating together. Cohabitat. So, why do two people live together? There may be very many reasons. But what psychologists have found out, the underlying reason is that it's easy to get, if it's easy to get in, it's easy to get out. Because you're not committed. So, the highest rate of failed relationships are in relationships where the man and woman are living together before they're married, because they never committed. Interesting, isn't it? And of course, everybody does it nowadays. I don't know what the percentages are, but there's quite a high percentage. And it's going up all the time. So now you live in an environment where committing to a man or a woman is becoming more and more rare, and to you it's normal, so it undermines your ability to commit. So, how would you get around that? Well, one way you could get around that is to understand marriage more deeply, and the purpose of it, and what's beautiful about it, and what's good about commitment, and the value of commitment, and so on, so that when you would look at cohabitation, you would say, I would never do that. Okay, now we're going to take it a step further. And this is really, really important. And it may take you many lifetimes to get this, but at least we'll start here. When two people have children, how did God design that to work? He designed a mother and a father. Because a mother cannot take care of kids without a father, because the father can go out and work and the mother stays home and takes care of the kids. Traditionally, that's how it worked. Because traditionally, she didn't have a maid or a washing machine or a microwave or this or that where she could, do the laundry and cook the meal in an hour. It basically took her all day because she was growing the vegetables, chopping the wood, putting in the fire, doing everything. So just taking care of the kids and maintaining the house was a full-time job. And so if she didn't have a man providing, she couldn't do it. Right? Now, we all know that if you grow up with a mother and a father, your chances of being more emotionally healthy and balanced and so forth are greater than if you grow up just with one parent. Because that's not the way Krishna designed it. Because Krishna designed there would be male energy and female energy, right? So what's the female energy? Don't hurt yourself, be careful. What's the male energy? Go for it. I might hurt myself. Doesn't matter. Do it. Right? So it balances, right? The male and female energy. The male energy is strong, tough, disciplined. Female energy is more nurturing, loving, like that. Father can get mad and the kid can run to the mother and cry. I mean, sometimes it's reversed, but making it a stereotype, right? So that's God's arrangement, right? There will be a mother and a father. Now, it's also His arrangement, as far back as we know in time in the Vedas, that when a man and a woman come together, they commit before they come together. Because they commit that I'll be there and you'll be there, and then if I'm committed that you'll be there and I'll be there, then we can have kids because the kids will have us both there. Right? Now this is actually so simple that nobody gets it. It's so simple, nobody gets it. What does everybody get? Sex is enjoyable, let's do it. If you get pregnant, we'll just have an abortion. That's what they get. We don't need to be married because that ties us down. Right, okay, now I'm going to say something very heavy. You know the story of Bilba Mangala Thakur. Bilba Mangala Thakur was going to visit a prostitute. It's a famous story. He would regularly see her. And one night, after his father's funeral, trying to hurry them up so he could go see his prostitute girlfriend. He was thinking about the prostitute during the funeral. And it was a very stormy night and very dangerous, and no one should be out, but he was so desirous of her, he went out and he risked his life. And there's many, many things. Most of you know the story. Many things happened where he could have killed himself. And so it was so stormy, she just locked her house thinking he's not going to come. And he climbed over the fence and showed up, knocked on the door. And she was in shock. She was in shock. She said, I can't believe you've come. And he was a Brahmin when he was young, and she said, if you had this much devotion to, just imagine you had this much devotion to Krishna as you have to me, you'd be this amazing devotee. And it hit him like a knife in the heart. It was just like, wow, that's so right. Look what I'm doing. This is crazy. I'm risking my life to be with you. If I put that energy into devotional service, I become a sadhu. So when Prabhupada talked about that story, it is often described that Chintamani, the prostitute, but he said, actually, she wasn't a prostitute, she was his girlfriend. But prostitute is a synonym for girlfriend. You understand? If you're not celibate, prostitute is a synonym for girlfriend. Simple, right? You don't have sex until you're married, till there's a mother there and a father, so you don't have to abort the kid or give the kid up for adoption or be a single parent. So simple, nobody gets it. Why don't they get it? Because everyone is seeing the world through sex. So they can't see this, because they just see it through sexual enjoyment. Does that make sense? So simple, isn't it? So, my point is, hold on, my train of thought. So my point is, in our culture, and this goes back to his point, now in our culture, well, you know, you meet some girl, and after all, how am I going to get to know her unless we live together? You'll have all your reasons, and, you know, I'm spending the night over 3 nights a week, you know, why do I need to go home, you know? It just might as well just stay. So you kind of just happens. Without thinking, you didn't make a choice, it's just there you are, right? So, if we want to become attached to marriage, then we have to understand the beauty of it, the purpose of it. We have to understand why this other system is failing, because there's no commitment. That any day, anybody can walk out. The guy can get you pregnant and walk out the next day. It doesn't work. Having 2 people committed together and raising kids together, it works. It creates healthy communities, creates healthy children. It's so obvious, isn't it? But our culture has obscured our vision. So that's the point he was making. And then in our culture, if you're a grown man or woman and you're celibate, you know, they're ready to take you to a psychologist and find out what's wrong with you. Isn't it? Like, what's wrong? Are you sick? You need a doctor? Are you gay? What is it? That's what I'm serious. That's what people will say. So, and your point about social pressure, if we understand what commitment means, then I think it would be more difficult for to be socially pressurized to do something, because we would realize that unless I'm attached to it, unless it's coming from my heart, unless I can commit to it, I shouldn't do it, just because I'm being pressured to do it. Like when we were young, many of us were pressured to take sannyas. I was pressured to take sannyas when I was 29. It was a little early for sannyas. But anyway, I was in saffron and, you know, looked good to me, you know, just dedicate my life to preaching. And you know why I was pressured into it? Because the other zone was making sannyasis, and our zone didn't have enough sannyasis, and the other zone was going to outperform us unless we had sannyasis. So we need to have sannyasis. So the GBC said to me, why don't you take sannyas? And I had been married 3 years. My wife must have been, I was 20, she was probably 26 and I was 29. So I said, yeah, sounds like a good idea. Let's do it, you know. It gives you an idea of the culture of ISKCON in those days.
Did you do it?
Well, Krishna saved me. Here's the story. Krishna saved me because. All right, let me go back a little. I don't know. I'll tell the story because maybe some of you can relate to this. But we were talking today, Leela Shakti and I were talking today about balance. And sometimes you want to do something, but your conditioned state wants to do something else. And your feeling is like, this would be great if I could do this, I'd really like to do it. But your actual level is over here, it's not here. And so you're out of balance between where your heart is and what your ability is, what your level of advancement is. So I I really thought taking sannyas was fantastic. I looked at it in a very positive way. But there was another side of me that wasn't really sannyas material yet. Like it wasn't the level of renunciation required or detachment required hadn't developed. But my heart, it was attractive. So I was like caught in the middle. Take sannyas. No, I'm not really ready. But it's so glorious. But you're still attached to women. But who cares? This is like just travel and preach, and women just a bag of stool. Yeah, but you like that bag of stool. And Vishwanath Chakravarti talks about that as an immature stage where you're not stable. And so for me, for many years, it was a challenge because there was this very strong part of me that was attached to renunciation, and this very strong part of me that wasn't able to renounce on that level. And many, many of our devotees took sannyas, and after a year, 2, 4, 5, 6, they realized that wasn't the lifestyle they wanted. It didn't make sense to them. They'd be a sannyas, and after 6, 8 years, they'd think, what did I do this for? What advantage does this have? I don't even like this lifestyle, and everybody's bowing down to me. I don't want that, and I don't even like doing austerities that much, and half the people I'm preaching to are women, and so this was really difficult. So, 1979, I went to Mayapur to take sannyas because our zone needed more sannyasis at the ripe old age of 29, full of vim and vigor. Vim and vigor? Vim. Strength and vigor. Vim and vigor. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. For Prabhupada, It's like, give up your wife, it's glorious. All right, she's 26, she's suffering, But for Prabhupada, who cares? Anyway. It's just, she'll get over it and life will go on and I'll do glorious service. And yeah, let's do it. So there I was, on the airplane, ready to the Mayapur Festival in 1979 to get my sannyas and conquer the world. And that year they put a moratorium because I think it was 1976 or 75. So many sannyasis fell down like 7 sannyasis fell down that year. So the GBC said, that's it. Nobody's getting sannyas indefinitely until we figure this out. Like how are we going to do it? So as soon as I heard that, I thought, Krishna, you saved me. You saved me. That was my first instinct, was like, I'm not actually ready for this and you saved me. And there was one person on the sannyas list, and it was so important for his zone. They were counting on him because the former guru had left and they needed another. He was the GBC and they wanted him to become like the figurehead. So they petitioned the GBC and said, I know you've put a moratorium, but at least let him do it. So they got it past the GBC, and he took sannyas. And a few years later, he gave up his sannyas. So he was almost protected by the moratorium. Anyway, Krishna protected me. Twice. Okay. Then it happened again. 1992. I was going to take sannyas. Then I thought, okay, by this time, I'm over, It's like finished, No, actually what happened is, I went back with my wife, because it was like, this poor girl, 26, so we went back together. And then later on she left me. And so I thought, okay, I'll take sannyas. So one of the GBC was going to recommend me. Guess what happened? He forgot. He went to the Mayapur meeting, and I said, did you recommend me? And he goes, oh my God, I forgot. I go, Krishna, you really don't want me to take sannyas, do you? You're really protecting me. there's a book out which was a master's thesis on sannyas. And in this book, one of the most interesting things that went on in this book were interviews with about 7 former sannyasis about sannyas life, why they took it, the difficulties, and so on. It's very, very interesting. But it relates a little bit to this social pressure idea that, sannyas was considered like the next stage of evolution. And so, one of the things that we realize, if we're going to make a commitment, the more we understand about what is entailed in making the commitment, the more realistically we can be about what to commit to. What does it entail when you take sannyas? What actually happens? How are you supposed to live? How can you live that detached life? Can you live a life where you perform more austerities, where you don't have much, where you spend you have as little interaction as possible with the opposite sex? Where people are bowing down to you and you always have to maintain the attitude, I am your servant, that's all I am. Can you do that? That's what it is. Or, or becoming guru, or becoming a mother, or a wife, or a husband. Do you understand all these commitments? So that, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. And the subject matter of tomorrow is, when you take a commitment, understanding before you take it the lifestyle changes you're going to have to make to be able to follow it. Because a lot of people make commitment and they don't change their lifestyle, and that's why they can't keep the commitment, because they don't realize, if I'm going to do this, my life has to change. Otherwise, things may continue in the same way. Even though I've made the commitment, it doesn't mean I can follow it. And a symptom that I've made the commitment would be I would see changes in my lifestyle, right? Wouldn't you? Okay, I'm a grihasta, right? I live with a wife. I live with my daughter. I have many disciples. I don't have many disciples. I have some disciples, and probably 65 or 70% maybe are women. So, as a grihasta, my female disciples have a little more access to me than they would to a sannyasi. And for some sannyasi gurus, they don't have any access. In fact, one sannyasi guru, you can't even write him an email unless you send it to another man, because he doesn't want to be alone with a woman. And emails are secret, so he feels that's like being alone with a woman, so he's very strict. So, if I were to take sannyas, then I have to think, okay, what changes am I going to have to make? Because I'm dealing with women this way because I'm a grihasta. Now if I'm a sannyasi, I can't do A, B, C, and D, and I have to do F, G, H, and I. F, G, H, I, J, K. I have to do certain things. So sometimes we make commitments, but we don't understand something's going to change. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Does that sound good? Sound great? Fantastico? Stupendous. You have a question, anybody? Comments? Arguments? Yes?
In regard to options
Yes.
in commitment, reflecting on how the Lord is giving, is customized the karma of every devotee,
Yeah.
sometimes the devotee pray to the Lord to this for full surrender.
Yes.
Expecting that the Lord will do the arrangement for him, so there is no more disturbance or option for self-gratification.
Take things away. Pray to Krishna to remove the obstacles.
Right.
Options.
But still, the option for self-gratification are
Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah.
and may seem contradictory. Like how to view.
Oh yeah. Well, he's asking. We might pray, Krishna, remove all the obstacles so I can surrender. But there's so many obstacles. Well, one time, you may know this story. In New York, the men chanted in the temple room, and the women chanted outside, somewhere in the hallway or somewhere, I'm not sure, or another room. And some of the women or someone had complained, because it's a very big temple room, maybe 4 times bigger than this. So there was enough room in the temple for the men and women to be separate and chant together. And so they told Prabhupada that the women are being asked to leave the temple. And the reason is because the men are disturbed. When they're chanting, the men are disturbed. So Prabhupada replied that, well, as soon as you go out on the street, there's women. It's not like you can avoid them. You can put them in the other room, but when you go out in Sankirtan, even if you don't talk to them, they walk by the street. It's not that you can not see them. So he didn't like that arrangement. And he's basically saying, by saying wherever you go, you're going to see them, he's basically saying, you have to learn to deal with this. So, obstacles can actually make you stronger. Like sometimes we need them, right? So, I'm a brahmachari, I'm going out in Sankirtan. There are women everywhere. If I can do my Sankirtan without being disturbed, it's going to require some strength internally, some determination. Maybe greater determination than if I was just distributing books at an all-boys school. But I actually could become stronger by distributing books at an ordinary co-ed university than just a boys' school, because I have to learn how to deal with it. So, looked at in that way, you could see that obstacles form a necessary part of our advancement. In the Bhagavatam it says that a devotee goes back to Godhead on a stairway made of obstacles. He's walking on a stairway of obstacles, and that's how he gets back to Godhead. Now, I think we have to make a distinction between obstacles and allurements that would cause you to fall. Because if you're sincere, Krishna will never put an allurement in your path that would cause you to fall unless you really want that. Like if you're attached to something and you're very attached to it, Krishna might say, okay, here. And then you say, Krishna, why did you put that in my path? That's my weakness. And Krishna says, because you keep thinking about it. You're showing me you want it. But if your desire is, Krishna, please don't ever allow me to become attracted, then he won't do that. Like we heard this in this morning's class, we heard Prabhupada saying, I can't fall down. And then later on he's praying to the deities that he can't fall down. And he explains, well, that's why I can't fall down, because I pray to the deities that I won't fall down. So that's our philosophy, that's also my experience. That if you want to fall, if you have a desire somewhere, Krishna might say, okay, if that desire is strong enough. I don't think that, sometimes devotees will say something like, well, there was this situation and, I was like traveling all alone, and then the plane, was canceled and they put us in a hotel, and one thing, and I had to get something to eat, and there was this girl there, vegetarian, and we got to talking, really nice, and I was preaching to her, and one thing led to another. If that happens, usually it happens because there's something in the heart. And Krishna makes that arrangement. Because I would ask the question, how come that never happened to so-and-so? He's been a devotee for 50 years, and that never happened to him. He never ended up in a hotel alone talking to a woman. Why? Because when he saw that woman, he wouldn't smile, he wouldn't say hello, he would just be kind of neutral, because knowing that that's the safest position. Not that he's not nice, but you understand? So, Krishna will put obstacles which are maybe necessary as part of the nature of this world for us, things to overcome. But if it comes to the point of we're caving in and crashing, pretty much because we want it. Because the devotees who don't want it, they don't end up in those situations. How does a man end up at Thailand visiting a prostitute if he's so detached? This is not possible. It would never happen. How does he just by accident end up in Thailand with nothing to do one night, alone? Unless there's something there. And he did go to the temple. Yes?
Если можно прокомментировать, вот так, по-настоящему, какие-то обеты, вот, реальные, я принял тогда, когда почувствовал, что Господь меня привез.
Real commitments that I signed up for, I took them when I really felt that Krishna is there.
Yes.
До этого я не могу похвастаться, что эти обеты были настоящие.
Before that, I can't say that my vows were actually real.
Felt that Krishna was there? What does that mean?
Ну, это очевидно, когда вот,
Obvious.
то есть он, когда он проявляется, это очевидно.
When Krishna manifests, it's
То есть
obvious.
это нельзя не заметить.
You can't not notice
You
it.
say, I took my vows knowing that Krishna was there. What's the connection between the vows? The knowing Krishna's there and he'll empower me to make it? That idea?
Ну, например, я никогда не думал, что я смогу поклоняться божествам, только не пришел.
For example,
В такой момент, когда хотелось повеситься.
I never knew that I could worship deities, and they just came at the
Oh.
time when I wanted to hang myself, and they just
Oh,
came.
oh.
И это было очень очевидно.
Krishna was there to arrange for you to be initiated. It was his arrangement. That's okay. It means Krishna's arrangement. Yes? Da?
Как-то так, эти обеты, они такие реальные.
Yes, these commitments became real.
Okay.
А вот как-то по-другому, что-то какой-то непонятно. То ли обеты, это будет, то ли выживание какое-то в социуме, непонятно.
But at other times, you can't distinguish whether it was a vow or it was just a way to survive within the social scene.
And so other times you can't distinguish whether it was a vow or a way to survive. Okay. Prabhupada has an answer for this. We discussed it in other classes. Let's say you did it as a way to survive within the organization. It seemed to be...
Хотел сбоку остаться как-то.
You wanted to stay with
Хотя
the
квалификация...
What?
The qualification was not there, you just wanted to stay with closer to the Lord.
Yeah. So, the way Prabhupada dealt with this is that once you made the vow, no matter what was going on within you when you made it, now you have to make it. So let's say I took initiation, I didn't know what I was doing. And now I understand it. So now I have to commit more deeply to the vows I took when I was younger. That's the idea. The only other option would be to say, I didn't know what I was doing, and then I give up the vow. So Prabhupada's point was, once you take it, then whether you understood fully or not, but you took it, so you keep it. So from this day on, you fully surrender to your commitment. Is that okay? So we'll end here, 7:35. We'll see you tomorrow. Oh yeah, we're going to go. We're going to go on a walk tomorrow at 5:20. If you want to come, we're going to go up past the Gurukula, down to the Jalangi, then down the Jalangi, and then come around to Prabhupada Samadhi. It takes about an hour. And we're going to make a little movie. So if you come, you'll be in the movie. That's a big impetus. You won't get paid, but at least you'll be in the movie. Now, I don't know if this movie is going to become popular. But if I ever become famous, then the movie will become very popular. Because it's a movie. The devotee wants to do a movie about me, and he wants to take videos of me in different situations, so we can take video of walking in my way. So if you like, anyway, it's a nice walk. We chant our rounds. So if you'd like to come, at 5:20 outside the Panchatattva, in the courtyard, we all meet by the gate, and then we go. Okay?
And the class will
And the
start?
class, same time, 6 o'clock tomorrow. And, thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanand.